Hello and welcome to the LFC transfer room. My name's Tino. This is the pre-match preview for the Crystal Palace game tomorrow night. Hopefully it will be a good match. I am joined by Neil and Kev for this Sunday night stream. We'll get straight into it. We'll look at we need to first look at that Fulham game. This is it was a very disappointing opening game to the season, and we really need a response from this. I'll go to Neil first. It was a gutting performance. It wasn't a good performance. Couple of injuries coming out of that Fulham game, a draw in the first game of the season, which we ideally should be dominating. We really do need a response to this. Is there a spotlight on this Liverpool team now?
There will be if they don't respond against Palace tomorrow. It's the first game for a while, the Fulham game, where I sat there after an hour and I thought to myself, this is a mess. It just looked horrendous. And then I think the changes that he made, obviously with Nunez and Milner and Harvey Elliott, which I think changed the whole dynamic of the right side, kind of left me with a bit of a happier feeling towards the end of the game. The result was disappointing. We shouldn't be dropping points there. So I think if they respond tomorrow in the right way, and the team selection is, what most people will want it to be, and we see more energy in the midfield and creativity, then I think we'll be fine. If we don't respond, then we go to Old Trafford away, and regardless of what people think, that's never an easy game for us. So there won't be a spotlight if we win, and we win well tomorrow. But there needs to be a response.
Yeah, certainly. There certainly does. It wasn't a great performance at all. Obviously, as you mentioned, the changes in the second half did help a lot. We got goals from Salah and Darwin Nunez, and we'll discuss in a bit more detail later on about preferred lineups and midfield and who should start and such. But Kev, Mitrovic was a huge threat all game for Fulham. Crystal Palace looking at that Fulham game as a blueprint, almost as a way to dominate Liverpool, to be aggressive and try and get some result from this game.
Possibly, and it'll be an approach that I would take. But I think we tactically didn't get the lineup right from the word go. We looked off it for a bit. It looked as though we were still in pre-season and we were in Austria still. It was a blip. We allowed Mitrovic to have his space. We allowed him to dictate where he wanted to go, and he created the chances that he did. If I was in opposition and I was a Palace, I'd be looking at putting Edouard up there and trying to do exactly the same. But that's based on a blueprint to start the game, possibly. But will it be effective? I doubt it, especially with us being at home. I think it'll be more effective trying that approach at Selhurst Park than what they do will be at Anfield, because, although we've got a few issues in midfield, which we'll probably get highlighted and probably talk about later, it's not a place where you're going to come and dictate as to where you want to play, but you can, in the first couple of minutes, you can put your actual mindset on that and try that way. But I doubt it will work on tomorrow, I think, personally.
Yes, that's a really key point to make with regards to the difference between home and away. Coming to Anfield is certainly a tough place to come to. If you look at the stats from our last 17 months in the Premier League at Anfield, we've won 13 out of 14. So it's certainly a difficult place to come to, especially when you've got the defence. Usually, what we've got. Before we do get into things, it is nice to see a lot of the regulars here. Jen, Helio, and Adam, nice to see you. Nice to see you in chat. before we get into things as well, if you're looking forward to the game tomorrow, hopefully we'll get a win. Make sure you drop a subscribe on the LFC Transfer Room YouTube channel and drop a like on this video as well. Make sure you obviously get your predictions in the chat later on at the end of the stream in terms of what you think the result is going to be. Neil, with that Fulham game, do you think we've handed Manchester City an early advantage in the Premier League title, or is it too early to be thinking about that? Manchester City at some stage you'd think are going to drop points. Getting off to a slow start from our perspective isn't great, is it?
It isn't, but I think it's one game, and they will drop points throughout the season, probably when they don't expect to, as they did in after Christmas last season. So it's one game. There's 37 games to play. I don't read too much into it. Opening day of the season, always dodgy. The crowd at Craven Cottage were up for it, and so were Fulham. Fulham play well, to be fair to them. So it's one game. For me now, it's all about the response, because we have the capability to go and win X number of games on the spin. So if we respond well, then I'm sure at some point they will drop points. And of course, we have the 2 games that we have to play against Manchester City as well. So I'm not worried about that.
Yes, yeah. You look at the goals conceded. Manchester City and Liverpool last season both conceded 26, fairly even, and even the losses and draws were relatively even as well from last season. So you'd expect at some point, it is a long old slog of a season, you'd expect at some point Manchester City to drop points. It was a tough start for Crystal Palace in the first game of the season against Arsenal. A difficult game, a 2-0 loss. They'll be looking at this game as an opportunity to try and get first points on the board of the season. Is there anybody from that Palace side, Kev, that you're worried about? Anybody that you think could potentially cause Liverpool problems?
On paper, no. But when they come to Anfield, we have Zaha that ends up playing like Lionel Messi. And the other one who will cause us, I think, a few more problems will be Eze for me. I quite like the look of him. I think he's a very good, talented potential who plays up alongside Zaha. And Edouard as well. I liked him at Celtic. I thought he was a good finisher. Finding it difficult in the Premier League, to be fair to him, but we have this problem with Palace, and always have to. We have players that have worldies against us. The likes of Zaha in the past has come here and we've punching another one who came here on Gerrard's last game at Anfield and looked like an absolute world beater. Do you know what I mean? The one that went to Everton as well. Another one. We make these players look greater than what they actually are, to be honest. But I don't fear anyone. But the two standouts for me is Zaha and Eze for me. How about you, Tino?
Yeah. Zaha and Eze certainly top quality. I think Palace have brought in some good players. Czech Dokora, new signing. Obviously came off a bit early. Potential injury against when he in the first game of the season against Arsenal. He looks to be okay, apparently, from what I've read for this game. He looks like a very exciting player. Vieira certainly got them, or will want them, based on last season playing some good football. He's brought in quite well and bought quite well. So it's going to be a very interesting game. It's going to be a difficult game. But Neil, it's all about getting that start right. It's all about as soon as that game kicks off, it's all about trying to press high, trying to dominate that Palace side and not letting them get any luck early on. Because if we let them come out to us and start to try and play, it could be a long afternoon. We do have to start right, don't we?
Yeah, and I think the start. I think there's been some talk recently that we've gone behind in quite a few of our last games. So we seem to have got into this habit of starting games relatively slowly, and I think even Klopp referred to it in his press conference that it's a habit that we need to break. So under Klopp at Anfield, we've always been about the fast start, haven't we? And we are capable of blowing teams away. And I think we'd all rest a lot easier if we did have that that kind of approach to the game yesterday. Whereas you say we press high, and basically we just pen them in, and just have wave after wave of attack. So it's definitely the way that on paper we would like to start the game. It doesn't always work like that. Just another point. I totally agree with you about Eze and Zaha as being the threat. I think Elise is also due back. I don't think he'll start the game, but he's another very, very talented player. I think he's French.
Yeah.
Came from Reading, so he's another talented player that could influence the game off the bench. But let's go for it, gung ho. Let's try and blow them away early doors and give us all a nerve-free evening.
Yeah, indeed. Jonte, we will certainly have midfield and Liverpool team news coming up in just a bit. We'll cover that. Don't you worry. So if you stick around, drop a like on the video whilst you're here. We'll get into that shortly. And I can see the chat is talking about the game today, Chelsea Tottenham. I will divert slightly from that. To try and merge the points, the two fixtures slightly, VAR and refereeing has been a concern for a while. The Tottenham game today highlighted that. Is that a concern going into tomorrow? And what are your thoughts, Kev, on that Tottenham game and some of the results from that game? Did you see it?
I did. I had it on. I thought what you see from Tottenham is a resilient side that keep themselves in it, and you need to go at least one or at least 2 or 3 goals up against them because they will always be in that game, especially with the forward line. That includes Harry Kane. I thought don't get me wrong, I think most of the game Chelsea dominated, but it was a bit like reminded me at Anfield last season against Spurs in the fact that Chelsea were getting a bit frustrated. We're dominating the game. Should have been more than 2-1 up before they equalised. But what was going to happen? As for the refereeing decisions, it doesn't surprise me one bit that we are talking about VAR within the second week of the season, and Anthony Taylor's part of that actual conversation, and the VAR team is an absolute joke. But what you expect? This is the refereeing and the standard that we have, and it will now be whatever happened in that game will be looked at and reviewed for the rest of the week, and that will be deemed as a way of being consistent when it's not. I like the game being allowed to go on, but I think in games against Chelsea and Tottenham, which is always a bit figglety, you've got more chance and more option of players getting injured a lot more with the challenges that are getting left. You know, we only saw that last week with Chelsea with the linesman not raising his flag, and Godfrey goes off with a horrendous challenge in the Everton game. So that is a concern for me. That is the biggest concern. But Chelsea, I'll be honest, Chelsea are always going to be there or thereabouts, but they can't be as consistent as what Liverpool and City can. So for runs, I'm expecting Liverpool and City to be that dominant again this season. But be wary of Spurs, because Spurs away is going to be difficult and Spurs at home is going to be difficult. And the way Conte sets them up and the way he's got them playing, very hard to break down. And you've got to be on it, you know, to win it. Havertz had that chance, and he would have scored. He would have won to 3-2, but that's the way it is.
Yeah, I think the big difference between the Spurs and the big different maker between Spurs and Chelsea for me this season is going to be Antonio Conte. I think he's slept on in terms of a manager, in terms of how good he is. Everybody talks about Pep and Klopp and some of the biggest managers in the world, and I think he's right up there in that conversation. Maybe not long term. He does short stints usually, but he's certainly done brilliant things. Previously, he brought Chelsea in the past from 10th to title winners. He brought, I think it was Juventus, started the dominance of Juventus, ended the dominance of Juventus. So
everywhere he's gone, Tino. Everywhere he's gone,
even
on Inter Milan, he's done exactly the same.
Exactly. Yeah, he's a huge manager. I think he's going to be the difference maker this season in terms of that third and fourth qualifying spot for the Champions League. Because there are 2 or 3 teams that are very bright and look quite impressive. Diverting slightly back onto the referees and the decisions from today. Neil, did you see some of the decisions? Some of the decisions weren't the greatest. I'm not going to lie.
No, Spurs got away with it today, didn't they? So they played poorly. There's been a lot of talk about Spurs, and I agree with your comments about Conte. But they were outplayed today, and arguably both goals could have been disallowed. Now, I don't have a problem so much with the first one, as long as it's consistent, and I think consistency is the big issue with that one. But for the second one, I mean, are we just going to have VAR for offsides now? Because they said they wanted to have a bit more tolerance and whatever. You can't do that on a football pitch, and then you can't review it and still see that there's no problem with it. So for me, I thought it was appalling. As I say, the second one is a disgrace, and I think Spurs and Romero got away with it. Even last week, he was lucky. He come in and did a scissors tackle on someone. I think they got away with it.
Yeah, he certainly did. Refereeing decisions hasn't been the highest standard, hasn't been the highest quality over a long period of time, and VAR coming in has really highlighted that for me. It's looking at the game tomorrow. I'm sat there thinking there could be 1 or 2 decisions that maybe do go our way or don't go our way. And you look and you think, I don't have confidence in the refereeing ability in this country. Anisha makes a really good point, which I'll get up here. VAR isn't as bad in other leagues. The problem is the referees we have, which is a really key point to hit on. The game tomorrow, the referee, you wonder and you worry about the decisions they make. I think VAR bringing it in was a very, very smart move, but it's the inconsistency that really kills you as a fan, and the lack of communication as well. And when they hide behind those decisions and trying to explain it, so it is certainly a worrying thing to see, and a worrying thing from tomorrow. You'd think, looking at the game, I'm not confident that we're going to get through a full 90 minutes, and there's not going to be a decision that is very, very sceptical and worrying.
So just on the referee for tomorrow, it's Mr. Tierney.
Yes,
he had his. I think he probably was the referee for the game with the worst decisions last season, which was actually coincidentally against Spurs as well.
Yeah. A very, very worrying to see. We will.
And Manana is VAR as well.
Yeah.
Doesn't help things either, does it? We will slightly transition back on to Liverpool Football Club. Hence, this is a Liverpool channel. Darwin Nunez, as in the title of this stream, he's come on as subs in the Community Shield. I was at the Community Shield. It was a phenomenal atmosphere. And he come on and he instantly made an impact. He did the same thing against Fulham. He surely has to start this game. Has Bobby done enough in pre-season and in the Fulham game to warrant starting, or does Nunez have to be the one that comes in?
when I said last week he should have started, I'm not, and I bow to differ with anyone who thinks that he shouldn't have started last week. I think he'd done enough in the Community Shield to have started. I'm not saying it would have changed the game, but it would have made it a little bit more interesting, and we would have had someone more prominent up there. I think Bobby's played well pre-season. He's slowly getting back to levels where we were with the expectations there. But again, it's tomorrow. I'm expecting a full debut from Darwin Nunez, myself personally, and I'll be slightly disappointed if we don't. I think we need to go with our strongest 11 tomorrow, and he is in that strongest 11 that we've got. Sadly, Bobby, your time will come in other games where we need you, but I want someone up front, focal, for crosses to get in that box and for him to get on the end of it.
Yeah, certainly. He seems like the guy. We brought him in to do something different, to provide something different, but now we're missing a few key players in our team, and some of them, like Bobby, and at the levels that we've seen them at in the past. Neil, are you in agreement with Kev on this one? Does Darwin Nunez have to start?
Yes, because I think Mo Salah came alive when Darwin Nunez came on the pitch last week. I do think Harvey Elliott had he played his part in that as well. But Nunez seems to have this unbelievable. He's like a magnet in the box. The ball just seems to find him, and things happen from him or from the players around him. And I don't think we've seen him look as technically good as we did at Anfield last season when he played at Benfica, because he was absolutely outstanding that night. So for me, he should start. And like Kev, I will be slightly disappointed if he doesn't. Whether Klopp looks at it and think, I've put him on for the last 30, 35 minutes in both games and he's done well in both games, and wants to stick with that plan, I don't know. But I suspect he will start. And he should do.
Yeah, he definitely for me, he does have to. Darwin Nunez, it was heavily involved in both games, the Community Shields and the game against Fulham, the first game in the Premier League season. He was heavily involved when he did come on. He made a huge impact, and he definitely provides something different, something we haven't had. Everybody's talked about predictability with the way we play, and teams like in the Champions League final sit back, try and nullify our wingers and our fullbacks to not provide a lot of space, and we struggle. Thiago was brought in to try and avoid that. He's now injured. We're very fluid in the way in terms of formation wise, in the way we play and set up offensively. And with Jota out, Bobby in poor form, he definitely has to start. He had very sharp movement. Touch on the ball was quality in the two games he's played, and you could tell right from as soon as he made his appearance on the pitch in the games, you could tell he was going to be a handful, and you could tell he's hopefully will get at least 20 plus goals this season if he continues to perform to the way we know he can perform. And the way we know he has done already. I thought Bobby was quite poor against Fulham. His touch was a bit off. He got subbed after 51 minutes, which I think is a key indicator. Usually, or over the last year or so, Jurgen's looked at the 60-minute marks, 65 minutes to start making substitutions. Evidently, Bobby didn't do enough in that game to continue, and we needed to change it. We have got a lot of injuries in the squad recently. We did earlier on this week, did a huge segment on Thursday night about Naby Keita in the midfield, and we had Owen and a couple of others make their points known and really discuss this in detail. So if you want to go back and have a look at that after this stream, be sure to go on the LFC Transfer Room YouTube channel and go back and watch that, because it was a very, very key, very important, amazing debate to go and watch. The midfield, we've mentioned it a couple of times. Harvey Elliott, the impact he has, Thiago's injury. Kev, with Thiago out now for 4 to 6 weeks, Curtis Jones out, Henderson poor form. Who would you expect to start, and who do you want to start?
I've been trying to think about this since last week, and I've tried to take me away from everything that's been going on emotionally on social media, fan base wise. To me, Klopp will go with Fabio, Henderson, Keita. I think there's an argument for Elliott to start ahead of Keita, and I would like us to go with Fab, Hendo, and Elliott for myself personally. I think at times with Henderson, it's a catch-22 with Henderson with me. He doesn't play, we kick off, and we miss his kind of drive and his and the way he plays on the pitch. When he does play, he's inconsistent, he's poor. So he's a bit like Marmite at the minute for me. But that's who we'll go with. He'll go with who we want, who he is most settled. 3 in there. There's an argument to change it up if you want to, but I don't think this is the game to do it. We need 3 points on the pitch, on the off the pitch. For me, Fab, Hendo, Elliott.
I can see a couple of comments in the chat. Charles isn't particularly happy with Henderson starting, and a few others. Neil, do you think Hendo's time in this side is slowly coming to an end? The impact he has as a captain and as the leader in that dressing room, on and off the pitch, is huge. But his performances recently haven't been what we would have hoped. Do you think his time is coming to an end slowly in this Liverpool side? And if so, who do you think is the ideal member of the current squad that could take over his place?
So I think that Hendo still plays very well when he plays in the 6, more so than he has done in the 8. I think the last excellent game I remember him having was Everton away last season in the 8. However, when he is pushed into the 6, I actually think he plays quite well. So for me, the choice of the 6 role is, if Fabinho is going to be first choice, no problem. Then Hendo is the one that comes in and plays as the 6 when Fabinho is not available. So maybe in that attacking role, which has been more advanced over the last sort of year or so, I think maybe his time is coming up, whether the manager agrees with that or not. But I do think he's a very, very good 6 when he plays, and he does get on the ball, and he does set the tempo when he plays in that role. So I don't think he's finished in terms of a role in the team. It just may be a slightly different role to what he's playing in currently.
Yes, yeah. I think from my perspective, with Thiago's injury, Henderson's poor form, Curtis Jones out, I think as much as this is probably going to be a bit of a controversial point to make, for me, my midfield would be Fabinho, James Milner and Harvey Elliott. Because I think when James Milner came on, he provided the tempo that we needed. Him and Harvey Elliott, when they both came on, I think really revitalized the team. There were game changers for me, and I think that's warranted them to at least start the game. I don't think Jürgen will go for that. I do think he'll stick, as Kev's discussed, with his sort of trusted Fabinho, Henderson. With Thiago's injury, I think Naby Keita will come in, although he has just come back from a bit of an injury, a bit of a knock. So be interesting to see whether he starts him, whether Milner starts along with Henderson as well, and maybe Elliott or Keita get brought in on the 60-minute mark. There's certainly a lot of room to switch it up and change, especially with the 5 substitutions now in the game. If I'm being brutally honest, I don't trust Naby Keita. I don't think it's been one of those where he came in, I was expecting so much, and as much as he had a decent season last year, I don't trust him. He hasn't been consistent enough over the time period he's been here for me to think he deserves to start. maybe he's one of those players. Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain is very similar, that need a run of games to get that fitness level up and to get that that performance going. But like I say, I don't know if I trust him enough. But I would like to see James Milner start. I would like to see Harvey Elliott start. I do think Darwin Nunez is a certainty as well. But he's not the... Sorry, go on.
I think that's important, though, because Milner did very well when he came on last week, as did Elliott, as did Nunez. So when managers question the attitude and the performance has been below par, it's a good thing to reward those players that have actually come on and made a difference. So I personally wouldn't have any issues with Milner playing. I'd like to see Harvey Elliott play because I think it gave us a really interesting dynamic down the right-hand side with Salah. Elliott seemed to pull out quite wide, which enabled Trent to go inside, and things really started to cook down the right-hand side when that happened. So I would be disappointed with a Milner on the left, an Elliott on the right, and then Fabinho or Henderson in the six. Fabinho's not been himself either, so either one for me in the six.
A couple of comments. You mentioned Fabinho's not being himself. There in the comment mentions that Fabinho needs to be dropped. He was the worst player against Liverpool. Wouldn't mind Hendo as a 6. We've got another comment as well, which is along the same lines. Fabinho needs to be dropped. He seems to be taking the mick out of that comment. Kev, do you think Fabinho maybe needs a rest? Maybe needs time out of this Liverpool starting 11, bringing in Hendo as a 6. I don't see anybody else who can maybe take over his role. We saw Bajcetic, I believe. I butchered the pronunciation of his name, so I apologise about that. In pre-season, maybe a bit too early for him to come in, but he's certainly impressed in pre-season. Do you think Fabinho maybe needs a rest at this point, or is this too big of a game this early on in the season to think about that?
It's far too early for me. You could have your pick out of about 10 of those players last week at Fulham as who played the worst, and there's reasons to take a majority of them out. For me, you lose everything. I think Fabinho's our best number 6, to be honest. Yeah, he hasn't been up to it, but he's still far too good, and we need him in that midfield tomorrow. I know they don't have Conor Gallagher, but we need someone with this kind of the way he keeps that front line in front of the 2 centre halves. Plays more like, allows them to play like sweepers really, and he mops up quite a lot. He's heavily important and heavily reliant in this starting 11. I think during time, you've got that Brazilian who is young and has shown in pre-season how good he is. I think he'll be on the bench tomorrow because he missed the under-23s game today along with Bobby Clark. So those two will be on the bench, I think, tomorrow. I totally agree with Neil with what he said about Elliott. I think Elliott showed signs of what he was doing prior to his injury last season, of how well he started in that midfield. But this is not the time to be taking Fabinho out of the side for me personally. No,
I think it's a bit too early for Fabinho to make those changes. Bajcetic, again, I've no. Please, if someone in the chat knows how to pronounce his name, please let me know. I would appreciate it. I think he'd done very well in midfield. He looked very aggressive in pre-season. Really stepped up high, won the ball in the games against one of the Red Bulls teams. I couldn't tell you which one it was. They merge into one for me. He won the ball high, which resulted in one of Darwin Nunez's goals in pre-season. But again, way too early at this stage to consider and think about bringing him in. The Fulham game was an interesting one because you mentioned about there was probably 10 people, 11 people on the pitch that you could think and sit there had a bad game. Diaz looked off it. Salah scored, looked relatively bright, but it's still very early on. Kev, I saw you was about to say something, so I will let you. Are we, as Liverpool fans, looking, maybe putting too much pressure on this team this early on in the season? Is this something where we just need to sit back and say, listen, it's early on. It's just the season's just started. The players are just getting back into the rhythm after pre-season and after a break. It's going to be a long slog of a season, especially with the World Cup in the middle. Do we as Liverpool fans need to just take a step back and really, really allow this team to sort of get into the groove of things going into this season?
I think as fans, it's hard to take the passion out and the emotion. I think we rely on that, and when things aren't going well, we get frustrated because we can see things that obviously they can see, but for whatever reason it's not being addressed. So the prime example is the injuries to Thiago, and then that breaks the camel's back, and then everyone starts getting into hysteria mode and starts thinking like the only option is just to go out and do what Man United are trying to do at the minute and just knee-jerk reaction and let's put money to solve the problem. When really what we should be doing and what we've always done is allow the squad and allow the coaching staff to deal with it. Now, there's no knee-jerk reaction. The only knee-jerk reactions we have done as a club was when we brought Oback in and we brought Ben Davies in. But Oback was brought in on a loan with an option to buy. So therefore, it wasn't that much of a risk. So we're not going to take a risk at this early on in the stage. I think because the window's open, everyone's first thought is, oh my God, we're not going to do nothing this season. And we're going to be heavily reliant on people that I don't like. Now, whether we like them or not, there's something there that the Klopp season, and this is a perfect opportunity. This is why I think we tend to forget that academies are there. We should be self-reliant on bringing people through and checking their potential. And this is the right time to be checking how good this squad is. And it still gives us enough time that if results don't go our way, that we can go into that transfer window and bring people in. But this is the perfect opportunity for the likes of Curtis Jones and the likes of Elliott and others as well within the team to start showing that they are more than just a squad player and a fringe player. At some point, they have got to take responsibility as long as the first team 11. They're part of the squad. Therefore, they should be part of the problem, and they should be seeing this as an opportunity and not heavily reliant on something that's going to break their back. As fans, we need to stop listening to the noise outside and expect that and allow the team and support the team in the right way. I know tomorrow the first mistake and the first opportunity that Palace have, we haven't scored within 20 minutes. There'll be ums and ahs, and there'll be, what did I tell you? This is what I told you was going to happen. I can see it now. But that's, as fans, it's hard as fans to take your emotion out of it. I had to this week. I've took myself away from social media this week because of it. I needed it for my own mindset, because otherwise you get caught up in it and you end up having a heart attack and over the issue. And you tend to forget that we're one game in to the biggest season in which you've got a World Cup in the middle of it, in which a lot of teams now, and you can see it already with certain teams, injuries are going to be a part of it, and your squad is going to be vital to you this season. Heavily reliant. We don't remember, we come back in Boxing Day. How many of our first team are going to be missing due to the international team going further in the competition? We're not the only team that are going to have that. City are going to be heavily reliant in that area. So it is going to come down to squad. So what are we going to do then? We can't go out and get an emergency buy. We've got to rely on the squad, and that's why we have a squad. That's why these 25 people that we put down at the start of the season, the 25 that should see us through the season. Now, whether we like it or not, this gives us a great chance and opportunity to see these young players and see if they are as good as what they are, or that we know they can be. And it's potentially a good time for them to put a name down, and we can then give the likes of Fabinho, Van Dijk and Nunez and whoever rest, because we've got the players there that have shown that they've stepped up and can do it. Sorry, yes. I ranted a bit there.
don't, don't worry one bit. Before I go back to Neil and get his thoughts on this, please make sure if you enjoy Kev's ranting, make sure you drop a like on the stream and drop a subscription.
You don't.
Drop a sub to the LFC Transfer Room YouTube channel and follow us on social media as well. Neil, is following Kev's rant, is that something you echo? Do you think this is the season where Jurgen says to some of these fringe players, some of these youngsters, Curtis Jones, Harvey Elliott, this is your time. This is the time you take your Liverpool career by the scruff of the neck and say, I deserve to be in this squad and I deserve to be playing consistently. Do you think this is a season that they do that? And do you think this game against Palace is a very good time to enable them to do that?
Yeah, I think so. I think we're building from solid foundations. So the core of the team, providing key players stay fit, is an experienced machine. So bringing in the likes of Harvey Elliott or Fabio Carvalho, Curtis Jones is a little bit older, probably needs to deliver a bit more, but bringing them in and introducing them in situations where they're needed, I think is the right approach. And we may have some very special players there. I know everyone likes Elliott. Carvalho has got some real big admirers in the game that think he can go right to the very top. So they're only going to get to the very top by playing. So they need to be trusted and throw them in, because you're not throwing them into a team that's losing, that is being overpowered in games. You're throwing them into pretty much a winning machine. Someone made a comment earlier, we're unbeaten in 20 league games. So it's the right time to introduce these players gradually. I don't expect Harvey Elliott to start the next 15 games, but tomorrow I think there's a good case to start him. So I think absolutely it's the right approach.
Of course, chat whilst you are here as well. Let me know in the comments who you think will start in midfield, who you want to start in midfield tomorrow, whilst we do transition onto another injury problem that we have in the team at present, and an injury problem that we've had in abundance a couple of years ago, which is centre-backs. I think we're all in the position now with Konate out, with Matip out, getting a bit of anxiety, a bit of worry with those centre-back injuries and going back to playing Rice Krispies and Cocoa Pops at centre-back for the rest of the season. So hopefully that doesn't happen. But Neil, I'll switch it up again and I'll come back to you. With Konate out, with Joel Matip out, this is the perfect opportunity, similar to that those midfielders, those young guys, for Curtis Jones, similar to those, for Joe Gomez to sit here and go, I was absolutely phenomenal when I played with Virgil van Dijk 2 or 3 years ago. They went on a run of 17 games out of 19 that they won, only conceding 6. It was a phenomenal partnership, and I think people forget that at times. Is this his spot? Is this his chance to take?
I think so. I don't think Matip has officially been ruled out. They said that he missed training on Friday due to a precaution, but anything to do with the groin, then you can't really see them taking a gamble with that. So, and with Gomez's pace, and with Palace looking to get in behind with the likes of Zaha, it might not be a bad thing. But he does need to take his opportunity. I think he is another player that needs a run of games, though, for you to really see his best. So my only concern, I think Joe Gomez is an excellent defender. He was outstanding alongside Van Dijk before. My only concern for him is if he comes in a little bit rusty and people start to get on his back because of that. But, we've got 2 players injured and we bring in our title-winning central defensive partnership. And I think where we're slightly better off than before is that Klopp will trust Nat Phillips if he needs to, which I think it took him 3 months to get to that stage 2 seasons ago. So we're not quite down, to the bare bones that we were at that time, where we probably wrongly played Fabinho and Henderson in those positions when we should have trusted the likes of Nat Phillips and Reece Williams. So we've got him, and we've got Sepp Vandenberg as well, who can cover right side and centre back. So there's a little bit of depth there. I think they're probably keen to get those players out, but Gomez's opportunity tomorrow, he needs to take it. And Klopp will be loyal if he does well. He's signed a new deal. Klopp will be faithful to him. If he comes in and does well, he will continue to start, I'm sure.
Yeah. I think that's a key point to make. Klopp's loyalty. If you do well, if you train well, if you take your chances, you'll certainly have a prolonged stay in that team. As you mentioned, the Matip injury potential was as a precaution. Kev, given that it was a precaution, would you risk Joel Matip in this game?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. No need to. I totally embed what Neil said. This is Gomez's perfect opportunity. Highest centre back partnership for points, 2.56 when he was with Virgil when we won the league. I hope he can get back to that level. I hope he can. I think we need his pace tomorrow. I think it'll be important. And the likes of him and Virgil, perfect partnership. There's no need to risk players at this point in the season because it'll just frustrate us as fans and also Klopp as well for taking the risk. He'll be annoyed if we start doing those things. We don't need to do drastic things yet. It hasn't come to that point yet. We haven't come to that point where we have to play an unfit player because it's necessary. As Neil said, we've got the Premier League best centre backs to fall back on. So let's give Gomez his chance and let's get behind him tomorrow. Do you know what I mean? Instead of getting on his back with the first problem or the first error he makes. Do you know what I mean? It's time to get behind these players, I think.
It would send the wrong message as well, wouldn't it? That if Matip's sort of 80% fit, you throw him in, even though you said to Gomez your long-term future's a club. So
I know,
absolutely.
It doesn't make sense.
No.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I do think Joe Gomez is slept on in terms of a centre half. For me, I said this yesterday. For me, Joe Gomez is England's best defender. Period. I don't see anybody, maybe bar Fikayo Tomori at AC Milan, who comes close. I really don't. I think he's slept on. I don't think he's done enough or will do enough in the time being to make England's World Cup squad. But Gareth Southgate is a trash manager, so I don't really care. I do think Joe Gomez, if he can get a run of games, if he can play consistently, he will be our starting centre back for the rest of the season. And I think it will take either an injury or an unfortunate run of fixtures for Konate and Matip to try and force their way back in. If we can get back to that Joe Gomez from a couple of seasons ago. One thing I think people miss as well with regards to Joel Matip, we talk often about his injuries and his consistent injuries and little niggles and fitness issues that he's had. And last season, he missed a total of 2 games. He missed 10 days in total from the entirety of last season, and that was down to COVID and an illness. Which I think if you look at his Liverpool career over the past few years prior to last season, he's been one of those where you can't play him in 2 games in 1 week. And I think what he managed to do and stay fit last season is huge for him and huge for the club. So hopefully this precaution is just that. And we go on to have for the full season, him and Joe Gomez and Konate fully fit, because we, as you say, we have the best centre-backs in the Premier League. You look at how Manchester United got dominated against Brentford, absolutely destroyed. You wouldn't get that with Liverpool. Our centre-backs and our defensive unit is so strong and so rigid that no matter who you put in there, you're going to get an elite, a top quality performance. the change, Neil, to the centre-back pairing, as we've mentioned, does give an opportunity potentially for Nat Phillips and Sepp van den Berg. Do you think this changes their long-term future at the club in terms of this season? Do you think Klopp's looking at this and thinking, we've had a couple of injuries, do I keep them here for the rest of the season, or do we do what we was thinking we was going to do, which is either get rid of them permanently or send them on another loan to a team? Do you think he's looking at this with the potential injuries and maybe considering changing his mind?
Yes, but I think a lot will depend on the situation with Matip. So nothing's been said, but I suspect Konate is not going to be back soon, as in within the next 2 to 3 weeks. So I think a lot will depend on Matip. The other element is you've got to think about Calvin Ramsey. He's still out. I'm assuming he's nearing coming back. So, because at the moment, Nico Williams has gone to Nottingham Forest. We don't really have cover at right back. We have Milner that can play there, but then we're taking someone out of the midfield and we don't really want to be risking those options either. So I think it will depend on Calvin Ramsey and I think it will depend on Joel Matip as to what the future is for those two. Personally, I would like to see one of them stay at least until January, because 2 years ago haunted me, and I would always like to have, whilst it might not be the best for them, I would always like to have some backup. I think they want to loan Van den Berg, and I think there's 4 clubs: Blackburn, Burnley, Sheffield United, and Watford. I think are all interested in him going out on loan, which would mean keeping Phillips in that role. It's not ideal for him, but if Konate's going to be out for a while, then he may get some game time. But I think they see more of a long-term future for Van den Berg than they do for Phillips. But it may be that Van den Berg goes out on loan if Ramsey comes back. There's a lot of permutations and combinations that I think they need to think about. So I think one will stay. And I think it will depend on whether Ramsey's back in the short term. If he's not, then Van den Berg will be the one that stays.
Yes, indeed. Going back to that centre-back partnership, it's just we're in a very lucky position as Liverpool fans, from my perspective, to have quality centre halves, and to have 3 of the best in the league. So whoever plays tomorrow, whether it be Gomez or anybody else, we will, and I'm confident that we will go out to win this. From this, I'm going to slightly transition to a general starting 11 prediction. So if the chat want to get involved in this, please let us know down in the chat who they think will start. I think certain positions are pretty obvious. Alisson in goal, Diaz and Salah, and our fullbacks, but it's obviously that midfield. Kev, I'll come to you. Who are you playing? Is any of the players I've just mentioned as pretty much guarantee starts? Would you disagree with them? If so, who would you bring in?
I've been Timothy. No, honestly, I'll keep the same wing backs as they are. I'd go with, as we've discussed, I go with Van Dijk, Gomez. I go with the midfield of Fabinho, Hendo, and Elliott, and I go with Diaz, Nunez, and Salah.
Very good, very good. I do have to agree with a large portion of that. For me, as was discussed already, you look at that midfield. I think we have to warrant and we have to rightly give credit to the performances of some of the other players that came in that Fulham game in the second half. Milner and Elliott being those players. And I think Henderson's influence is slowly deteriorating in terms of what he can do on the pitch, although he does provide a lot of cover for Trent and allows him to express himself going forward. Neil, is there any changes from Kev's 11 that you'd want to implement, or is that pretty pretty
I'd
bang on the money.
I'd probably put Naby Keita in for a bit of mobility in midfield. So in the 6, I'm not fussed whether it's Fabinho or Hendo. If I was forced to pick, I'd go Fabinho. Then I'd have Keita on the left and I'd have Harvey Elliott on the right. I just think we need someone that's fairly mobile and can get around the pitch. And as strange as it seems, 37-year-old James Milner can be quite mobile when he needs to be. So I wouldn't be adverse to him being in there either.
Yeah. The final thing we'll end on, and again, like I said, the chat can get involved in this. Let us know your score predictions tomorrow for tomorrow's game down in the comments, and of course drop a like on the stream if you've enjoyed it, and of course subscribe to the LFC Transfer Room and follow us on socials as well. But Kev, who scores? What's the score going to be? Who are your scorers? What do you think in terms of predictions for tomorrow's game?
Well, I predicted 4-0 last week, so we know how well my predictions go. I'd say 2-0 or 3-1. And I see Salah and Nunez scoring.
Very nice. Neil, for you, who do you think scores? What the score's going to be? Is it a Liverpool win? Is it a guaranteed?
I hope it is. I'm going to go for a 3-0 Liverpool win. And I'm going to say Mohamed Salah, Darwin Nunez and Luis Diaz, because I think he is due a goal.
Indeed. Jen, as much as I love your optimism,
I like it, Jen.
I'm not entirely certain that it'll be 9-0. I'm pretty sure that'd break a whole lot of Premier League and footballing records. So I'll take it. But, I do love the optimism. That'd be, as Helios says, that'd be a perfect result for Liverpool Football Club.
Do you know who the opposition
What's your
were
prediction, Tino?
Oh, sorry.
I will answer Kev's question first, Neil, and then I'll let Neil jump in. For me, I predicted 4-1 for the Fulham game to Liverpool. Evidently, my predictions are as good as Kev's. So I would like to see maybe a 3-1 victory. I think Palace could cause us some problems going forward. I do like the couple of players we've already mentioned today. Eze is a key one for me. He's a phenomenal talent. And I think it's only a matter of time before he gets a move to a bigger club. So for me, it would have to be maybe 3-1. I'd bank on Eze to score for Crystal Palace. I think Salah scoring is a given. And I'd like to see Joe Gomez score. He doesn't score often. I don't actually think he's scored for Liverpool Football Club yet, if my memory serves me correctly. So yeah, I think I'd go maybe Darwin Nunez, Mohamed Salah, and Joe Gomez. But Neil, you was going to ask me a question.
It was just in response to Jen's prediction of 9-0. I was going to ask whether you knew, either of you, who the last team Liverpool beat 9-0 was. And I hope I'm right. I could be wrong.
I haven't the faintest. I couldn't even hazard a guess. I would imagine it's at least 20 years ago, I'd assume.
No, it's...
Go on, Kev.
Right. I'm going back a bit here. I know we beat Birmingham in the league 9-0. I don't know if that was away though, but that's going back in the 1940s or 50s or so. I don't think it's that far back. 9-0. Got close with Palace, didn't we? 7-0 at Sellers Park, and no, I don't. Sorry,
so, I could be very, very wrong, but I've got a feeling. In the 1989-90 season, we beat Crystal Palace 9-0 at Anfield, and then we lost to them 4-3 in the FA Cup semi-final later that season. I could be wrong, but I think from the top of my head, it was Palace.
Yeah.
12th of September, 1989, Liverpool faced Crystal Palace in the First Division fixture at Anfield during the 89-90 season, which finished 9-0.
There you go.
That is a very good memory. That is a very, very good memory.
Also shows that I'm old as well.
Yes, slightly. Well, let's be realistic. You two guys are just a slightly bit older than me. Just a tad, you know. I may look 12, but I'm actually 25. So this has been the Liverpool Crystal Palace Premier League preview for the fixture tomorrow. We're certainly looking forward to the game. I'm certainly looking forward to it because I'm going to be there. I believe Kev will be there as well. So hopefully it'll be a very, very good atmosphere tomorrow, and we'll come off and really get a response after that poor, very disappointing game against Fulham. Of course, as mentioned in the chat, we don't want any injuries tomorrow. That's the last thing we need. If you've enjoyed this, please make sure you subscribe to the LFC Transfer Room YouTube channel and follow us on the social media as well. Drop a like on this video and this stream if you've enjoyed it, and make sure you follow myself, Tino, Neil, and Kev on socials as well. But this is it. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you tomorrow. We have plenty of content coming for you. If you want more Liverpool preview content, we do have a match opposition preview. Jack interviewed Matt Woosnam from The Athletic. He's the Crystal Palace reporter from The Athletic. So if you want to check that out, that has been dropped today. Make sure you check that out after this. So thank you for joining us, and we will see you tomorrow.